So once again, thank you for your attention and for being here, and also those people that are looking now. A warm welcome to our event, Art Brunch, number 67, with Anna Jurkiewicz and Amia Yokoyama from Poland and from the US. And today we're gonna talk around 1 hour. First is the presentation from Amia. Maybe you can switch the camera to see the audience can do that. Yes. And it's a part of this artist in residence program that we are part of it since 2015. They're called Styria-Artists-in-Residence, shortly ST.A.i.R, from Landsteiner. And we are mostly have 8 or 9 people in a year. They come into this Schaumbad and they have this working space here if they want to. And around 2 or 3 months normally they stay, and around the last days we organize this art brunch and talk about how it was here in Graz for you guys, and maybe also beginning before that with the matter of fact how your artistic behavior started and changed. And I will just give it to you, I think, because we have now this so-called presentation. And after that, there will be place for questions for the audience. And after that, immediately we will have the part of Anna. Also 15 minutes. And later we will have the performance from Anna with Vera Hagemann today with Reza Kellner in the Haust. There is some ceramics also to sell. For sale. Christmas is near. Sorry. And we have also a room to show Amia's videos. So if I don't forget, for those people that are here. Otherwise, I will give it to you, and thanks again to having this really stressful, but I hope we will enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keyvan. Talk loud. I'll do my best. Hi, everyone. Let me share the screen. Oh, I can't. Hold on. Sorry, one minute.
Okay, then I will say something while you are doing this. Our current exhibition is also from Nelly Stein. It's an artist that will, I think, until December. Let's see how the rules will be for COVID, but normally it will be possible to see today, the last day, and let's see. Okay.
Unmute. Okay, good. I'll do this. Maybe. Oh no. Okay, it's not gonna work. I just can't have my notes. Okay. Mute. Which one? Mute the microphone on. Okay. Here we go. Hello everyone. It's a little bit challenging because you can't see, but I'm doing a lot of different things on my screen, so I'm trying to multitask my screen. You can see here. It's good. Is it okay if I don't do full screen on the presentation? It's okay. Yeah. Okay. So hello, I am Amia Yokoyama. Here's some ways of finding me on the internet, which I can share again at the end. So I'm going to just talk, I'm just going to sort of walk through some of my work, starting with some of my earlier work, and then moving into the present. And I might skip some things in my presentation for time, we will see, but I will try to sort of touch on everything that I feel is important. So I am a multimedia artist. I work with video, animation, installation, sculpture, sometimes performance, sound, etc. So I'm very over-eager to try everything, blessing and the curse. But primarily, I like to build worlds, and I find video and animation are great ways to do that. So this piece was something I did in 2015. The show was called Pleonasms and Modes of Palpability. These are two words that I was really interested in. Linguistics and words are also, I feel like, are materials that you can work with along with visuals, and I'm interested in how like composing words also creates meaning. So the word pleonasm means the use of more words to convey a meaning. Like you say the same thing a million times, a million different ways, but to say the same thing. And it goes back to this idea that you'll see a theme throughout my work of this sort of multiplicity. Multiplicity is something that I'm interested in. So we start with the table here with some sculptural pieces, and there was, you can't see, but there's 4 monitors here, another monitor here, and then there was another 2 and 4 monitors on the other side. This was also, I started working with porcelain as a sculptural material, which I'll talk more about later. For this piece, I was also very interested in sort of science fiction aesthetics, also for its like world-building powers. And let me just, I will play a clip of the animation that was sort of central to this piece. And as I play this, I will talk over it a little bit. So let me find the video here. Okay. I have to talk over. I have something I wanted to read over. So, okay. So this video is playing downstairs. For those who are here, if you want to see the full thing, I'm just going to play this clip. And I'm going to just sort of read some things I was thinking about while I play this. So Yes, I engage in, like I said, a practice of world building, reimagining, colliding, and falling along with everything else. I engage the idea that the place where I come from, or where we collectively come from, is a constantly moving and shifting location that is tied to the context of the present and also to each other. What occurs in the moment when the boundedness of the initial source of one collides with the boundedness of another. I am interested in ecstatic states of change, not in a linear direction, but out in all directions, in favor of multiplicity and illegitimacy, not in opposition to identity or history, but in defense of sometimes not knowing, and not knowing as a defense to reject and resist imposed frameworks. The failure of language and definition to describe something that is interstitial, because definition precedes judgment, which is used to create value. I'm not interested in judgment or value, I'm interested in relation, in panoramas where everything is timelessly reforming and alive, pointing at and pushing against preformed judgments and systems of value, a process of actualizing, a space called love. I lust after something real by creating new systems of fantasy to break down old systems of desire, control, and authenticity. My process becomes my personal mythology. Life comes together regardless of limitation within my fantasies, within animation, within algorithms of the computer brain, as if together we were all masters of material and digital manipulation. Processes and ideations that hack quantum notions and disrupts industrial thought streams that try to tell me where I come from and how to name my thing called body. So this piece...
there is also some sound for it.
Yeah, there is some sound for it.
Eric Heap, I think its name.
Yeah, Eric did the sound for this.
Because this is really amazing symbiosis between and that.
I wasn't playing. Do you want me to play a little bit of the sound? Downstairs, you will get the full effect with the sound.
Yeah, or this is a Vimeo link, I think, in the chat.
Yes, it's also on my Vimeo page. So yeah, for this piece, I was really thinking about this type of like morphing and non-natural body fluidity that not only occurs in animation all the time, but also is like more of a sensory experience that seems to be in contradiction to the concreteness of reality or the concreteness of the boundedness of my own body. And there's a feeling that happens, or there's an experience that happens that doesn't quite match up. And in animation has become this space where I'm able to explore those things in a very sort of literal, material way.
Video.
I just showed a short clip of it. It's much longer.
Yeah, I mean, you played it like backwards when you see things are just happening.
Sometimes the time is changing where it's backwards or frontwards. It's done with stop motion, which is moving things frame by frame. Some of these materials, like you can see here, this material is a material that's very plastic but doesn't have good memory. So as soon as you sculpt it, it starts falling. So I like to think of it as like gravity and the physics of this world were sort of collaborators in this world where I was defying physics and gravity and creating a world where those things don't matter. And with clay, you mold something and it stays. So there's these two contradicting physics happening within this film that I was really interested in finding, sort of like trying to find a place where they could meet and talk, I guess.
So this is how you choose material.
Yeah, I like material that has a little bit of resistance. I like material that has sort of a voice of its own, and I like to sort of find the corners of that material where it starts sort of disobeying me or something. Or like with digital work or with animation work, which I'll talk about more, and some other works, especially with digital software, which relies on algorithms. I try to push it to the edge where those algorithms kind of start making mistakes, and it almost becomes humanized in a way, in that the input that I'm giving it is kind of like messing with its brain, and the output is a result that is not supposed to exist. So I think, yeah, my relation to like working digitally and my relation to, say, working with clay or physical materials has a similar impulse in that way. So here is a piece. Let me show you here. This was a piece I called Initial Conditions, which has some of these clay sculptures. There's also videos installed again, and these sort of tessellated wall hanging pieces. I'm still working with these sort of more abstract life, but still lifelike forms. And I will show a clip of this as well.
What I also saw in this piece before you play it, between the figurative and abstract. Like from one point, there is no this or that. It's just like a mixture.
Yeah, I think that like when there is a figure, or we immediately, as people ourselves into it immediately, and then when you move outside of that form, I think there's still an urge to do that, as we all sort of desire relation, I think, as a natural impulse as a human. But maybe the access to it becomes more dense. So when I work with video or time-based media, it's not narrative in a way, but I like the legibility and the sort of the legibility of what's happening to come in and out of focus. Because as is my experience of being alive, you know, some things are very clear, other times things are not. So let me play a clip of this. Again, the full version is downstairs. It was originally installed as a 2-channel piece, so 2 separate monitors. I've also showed it with projectors. Again, I'm working with stop motion and CGI, which is a 3D software, and I like working with those 2 modes of those 2 different expressions of the 3-dimensional, and I often will scan 3D scan the sets that I'm working on with stop motion, or 3D scan my sculptures and then bring them into the digital plane. So this sort of, the landscape is a 3D scan of what was happening with my hands as well. So there's kind of this back and forth a lot between them.
Do you also use 3D printing methods?
No, if I had access to a 3D printer, I would play around with it. But okay. This has sound too. I don't know if the sound is. Oh, okay, hold on. Let's. Hold on. Oh, because of Zoom, right, I have to set my sound. Hold on, I know how to, hold on. Let me do, sorry, 1 second. Wait, where did the screen go? Okay. Yeah, I just have to share my computer audio, I think, with Zoom. Does that work? I see.
two monitors, like left and right. You cut them in the house.
Yeah, so they're two different, yeah, it's two channels. It's two different, ideally it would be shown on two separate projectors or two separate monitors, but for the sake of on the internet, I just put it together in there. Because there's kind of these two separate but parallel things happening, and again, this conversation sort of between the two sides. And for this piece, I was really interested, again, I'm interested in sort of boundaries and the blurring of boundaries when thinking about the self or the body or and things like that. So I was thinking about sort of seepage and permeability and this idea of moving through and of these like expressions of internal feelings, or we say like gut feeling. What is your gut feeling? And so thinking about these sort of things, or like psychic bacteria or positive contamination. And what does this mean? And yeah, and sort of exploring those things as like objects and sort of ambiguous life forms, but also as landscapes. I think about sort of internal landscapes a lot, or the landscapes of the unseen. So, okay, so here are these images. Okay, and then this was a piece, an installation that I did in 2018. Again, this is porcelain, again here, that's sort of hanging from this, and there's a projector and a mirror here that the mirror sort of reflects the projection back over here on the second sculpture, and also creates a shadow from this sculpture, and then there's some text here. And like I kind of mentioned before, I'm interested in this idea of myth-making, or like creating your own personal mythology, or world-building through rewriting myths. So this one, let me show a clip of sort of the installation of it, so you can understand sort of how it was experienced in the space where it was exhibited. So I created an animation that was projected then onto these sculptural works. And this, the sort of, the idea behind this was it was kind of a rewriting of the Japanese creation myth, called The Creation of Heaven and Earth. And the story basically describes this legendary birth of the celestial and earthly worlds. And in this version, Ibisu, which is also nicknamed like leech child or slug child, was traditionally described as this deformed firstborn and then rejected ancestor, like this illegitimate mistake first child before the gods birthed the earth and the heavens and the world. There was this mistake that they just kind of cast down the river. And so I'm kind of bringing that sort of ancestor back into a more sort of heroic position, that this is this like common ancestor of us all, of this mistake, and this like mistake deformed, not having a set form or identity. And so the narration of this story I kind of has in text down at the bottom, and I project it over these different sculptural forms. And the original text is I sort of translated to this like hybrid English, using sort of internet and hacker lingo, which has this whole language of its own that means things. And when I was reading through this like internet hacker linguistic dictionary, the meanings of the words become actually very poetic, although I might not understand the meaning of them in context of like what's happening in the computer. You know, I'm not a hacker. I don't understand how computers work to that extent, but just the descriptions of them became these very poetic forms, and so I started thinking about this dictionary also as like a poetic mythology.
It will be interesting how they could react, or how the people do that programming or hacking stuff, how they would see this again in this context.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure.
Or
they may not even, like, it's really woven in, like, worked in there. It's not like taken, it's not a direct translation at all, but I was using, pulling a lot of language from that. And I was kind of, again, like repositing this like common descendant, that it's like this thing that refuses to be written out despite its lack of form. So although something is this sort of like illegitimate mistake, error, and lacks form, it will not be written out of the myth in my version.
It's interesting how these larks also looks like they are moving.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah, with the animation over it.
But how exactly do you did this porcelain? Normally it's really fragile.
Yeah,
it's
still very fragile. Yeah, there's small pieces that I tied together. So I created kind of like a tile that I sort of sewed together. Same with this piece in the back.
Yes.
They're different pieces that I sort of, you can kind of see they get tied together. And I like porcelain also for its transparency in the way that video and film is essentially light. It's a material that where you're working with light, and porcelain is a material that also works with light, or becomes a screen almost that emits light also into its own.
A magical wondering or effect of magic.
Exactly.
In your works.
Exactly. Okay. So I hope we're not going too over time. And then this is a piece I made a little bit more recently in very early 2020. It was commissioned by this space in New York that has like a gallery in it, but it's also functions as a nightclub. So I had been there just to see different musicians play or dance parties or whatever, this sort of, so it becomes this gathering space, and this video was installed within the space. So I really liked the idea. And normally I don't work this way. It's like I'm working in a gallery or something, but I love creating video interventions in sort of unexpected spaces. And so I loved that like different crowds of people, depending on like what the music was that night, would gather and like interact with this video in different ways. So let me I'm not sure. Later. I don't know, right? It's fine. I don't ignore that. Okay. Okay, so let me play. And it was installed on a vertical screen in the space, so that's another reason why it's vertical. But I also kind of always think it's silly that there's like a standard shape or size of a video frame, you know.
Yeah, but isn't it also about you can see it well in your smartphone, or
this? No. I made this. It was specifically just for the screen that was installed in the space. But yeah, I guess you could. But because it doesn't play on Vimeo and stuff, it still plays horizontal. So again, this the figures that you see in here are figures that you can download for free off the internet, and 3D. There's like different 3D like models that you can just download for free.
Are they mountains or are they vegetables?
So this is a scan of performers, which I don't know if you're familiar with Vocaloids in Japan. There's the biggest pop star in Japan is a hologram. It's a disembodied fantasy of a pop star. And Vocaloids are these voices of the pop star that any user can download and create music with. So again, this pop star becomes infinite multiplicity of itself, made available to anyone or users or anyone who wants to use it. Yeah. So there's this idea in this essay by
you catch them, cut them out from that context of analog, stop motion, claymation, and then put it in this.
And then bring it here. And again, like playing with different, when we think of two-dimensional, we kind of take it for granted. When you're working with animation in this way, the definitions of very different, messed up. A three-dimensional in real life then becomes a two-dimensional thing as a video, and then I bring it into this 3D digital world and it becomes three-dimensional again. And so it's moving through these different states of change between different dimensions. And for example, you can kind of see the flatness of this video that I brought in here, even though it's a stop-motion 3D thing. So when I brought it into the 3D world, it then becomes flat. So again, like something that embodies a two-dimensional manifestation and a three-dimensional manifestation at the same time. And for this, there's this essay that I read that I really loved, sort of talking about waywardness and talking about the underground and talking about that as sort of a very revolutionary space and thinking about the nightclub or the dance floor or these sort of like spaces where also you kind of lose, again, you're sort of losing your individuality and joining in sort of into a collective experience. And there's this theory about yokai. So yokai are, again, I pull a lot from Japanese mythology. I'm half Japanese, so that's there's this thing called yokai, which in Japan, which are these like folklore sort of deities in a way, where like there's this a little monster that describes the feeling of being watched. So the feeling of being watched then all of a sudden becomes this embodied like little guy that you can illustrate, or drowning in a river becomes embodied into this like monstrous form. So they're almost like these deities. And there's this theory that in ancient Japan, these yokai were actual deities that were more part of religious or spiritual practices. And then when Buddhism and Shintoism came around, these deities kind of got demoted or pushed underground and then were called yokai and became these kind of like these ghosts or spirits or just stories. And in order for them to exist, they had to kind of like demote themselves or move into an underground space, even within the understanding of something like.
So they are still existing, but in another dimension.
Yeah, they do not disappear. They just start. They write themselves into a space that is not regulated by whatever the dominating power is at that time.
Are they individual creatures, or are they just all
like yokai traditionally? Yeah, they're individual little creatures. And so I was very sort of inspired by that idea of taking on new forms of embodiment, or like going into the unregulated spaces in order to thrive, rather than fighting for a position of dominant power.
But you are also, in these pieces, you don't have really a defined space. It's just like middle in the nowhere. It's now up, it's now down. It's
exactly.
Just like
And this idea of nowhere, which is utopia, literally translates to nowhere, or a place that is not a place. And so, yeah, I was thinking about that idea a lot, and yeah, where like walls are not fixed and floors, there is no floor and there is no wall and there is no edges, and that is sort of this space of infinite possibility for those that are not allowed to exist in.
The only limitation is the frame itself.
Yeah,
no?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah. And again, my process in here, or like the materials that I'm using here, are a bunch of scanning of my sculptural works, making stop motion, which you were talking about, Keyvan, or you recognize, and bringing them in, and sort of, I'm always trying to like mush together digital environments with like actual physical environments. Which I think now, even in the last couple of years, we're on Zoom, like those things are so mushed together already anyways, that it seems like silly that like within art or even thinking about material that those things also wouldn't be totally intertwined.
Did you have also a painting background? Because I was thinking about some kind of like painting somehow.
So I will talk a little bit about painting. I don't have a painting background, but I've started painting here at Schaumbad. I made some paintings, so I will show a quick snapshots of that. How long are we talking
for? 20 minutes ago.
Okay,
maybe
so
20 more.
So I'm gonna skip talking about this one for now, I think, but it's playing downstairs. I performed in this video. I did a couple years of doing sort of more straight-on filmmaking with performers and actors. I'm not going to talk about that too much. I'm going to focus more on animation and sculpture in this presentation. But downstairs, if you want to see some, I have some things playing there.
Oh, these are really amazing. I saw one of them.
Yeah, I maybe took that off the flash. I don't remember, but yeah. So
are fish getting thirsty?
Oh yes, yes, yes. So they're, yeah. I like trying all sorts of things. So I did this whole film where I had actors and performers, and I was building sets on sort of a larger scale, and also exploring a lot of the ideas that I'm talking about in this different new form. But I'm not going to talk. I'm going to actually skip. I'm going to skip that. But that was. It was filmed in a couple different places. I started it at a residency that I did in Maine, in Skowhegan, Maine, which has 60 residents. So there's 60 people, and I got them to perform and act out for me. And then I also finished shooting it. This scene is shot in LA.
It's in the US also, the residency, no?
Yeah. And this space was sort of this like back hall broadcast room. Like it's like the room, like you have the news up front, and then there's the control room where people are changing and hacking and
playing saxophone.
This whole, okay, I'll talk about it. Now you got me talking about it.
I love that movie. It's so great.
So I'm gonna skip it. So is there sound?
Why? Question mark. Exit question.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we could just
Play the sound of the video. I'll just talk loudly.
Puzzle. Crossword puzzle. Jigsaw puzzle. Problem. Puzzle of problem. Why? Question mark. Exit question. Any graphic question.
At what size? Is a pebble a rock?
Did we come from sea, or are we going to sea?
Ah, I see.
Did the chicken come first, or the egg?
What is the speed of darkness?
Do fish get thirsty?
Can you cry underwater?
What shape is the sky?
True,
False.
true,
False.
true.
False.
Also, you was the director of this piece and the setting and
Yeah.
everything.
You just do it all.
Yeah.
Setting, costume, write the script, direct. Sometimes I'm also shooting it. My friend Cameron helped me shoot a lot, and my other friend Forever also helped me shoot. So it's all my friends who just agree to show up. Oftentimes they have no idea even what's happening. I'll feed them the lines right before. They're like, what? You know, because there's no time to prepare because no one's a hired actor. It's just kind of like, are you down? Show up? Okay, great, let's do it.
And it's around 20 minutes.
Produce up to 500,000 seats.
4-minute.
The entire system is a hand wave to gloss over the froggy logic.
And then there's also some commercials. There's also like a weather channel. There's a weather channel. There's a news channel.
Massage. What are they?
Yeah, these people are selling something. You might pitch.
No, whatever. Plastic is important.
They're selling a
But there seems to be every reason to believe that were it possible.
Oh, and this scene, they're talking in two languages, but at the same time, and the same person.
Yeah, the same person. So this is kind of this assembly line where people are wrapping and unwrapping something. There's this part being wrapped or unwrapped.
See. Why is this plastic factory so important?
Yeah, I mean, plastic is also sort of television and commercialization and like what makes something, what makes you desire something, what makes you want something, what makes you want to consume something. Plastic is usually involved in some way.
Or packaging the ceramic pieces?
Mixed together with warm very yes.
It's so hard to see this scene. I'm sorry, I really get a headache because they keep talking at the same time.
And it's going to cause a tremendous amount of disruption in this area. Tsunami, we don't know. We're just bracing for the worst of everything. Okay, but you don't have snow, so that isn't good either. But that snow will be moving even your car. Hailstorms coming in. Basically, just cover up everything. I highly that's outside. Cover it with plastic or move everything indoors. Anyway, everything that gets weather. I'm sorry to report that to you tonight, but stay tuned. We'll make sure that everybody is safe. Thank you.
the role of being free, maybe, society, all those.
Some people have had changes in behavior, hostility, agitation, depressed mood, and suicidal thoughts or actions while taking or after stopping drugs. If you notice agitation, hostility, depression, or changes in behavior, thinking, or mood that are not typical for you, or if you develop
I bumped 3 more gates. I bumped the bottom loop down to 3 unwrappings.
They keep with the keyboard like instruments.
Its flower has beauty, and its root has its worth.
Okay, Amia, I don't want to interrupt you, but maybe we could just go to that part that maybe happened here in Graz or Austria, because we don't have unlimited time.
So now we're in present time, which is the work that I've been focused on the last maybe 2 years, which we will speed through, but that's okay. So this is the last show that I did in early of this year, using video projection and sculpture. So I will read this short thing. There is a thawing, muddy utopia here. Bodies are hardened in glaze and clay and softened in the slit of the digital render. Pleasure is a leaking encyclopedia. The internet is mythology. Friendship swarms like a gaggle of clouds or a team of insects. To quote an anonymous user, a captured prey will be enveloped by the entire slime and given rapturous pleasure. The excess portion of their body that doesn't form the shape of a woman will accumulate at their feet. We gather in pools indistinguishable and silver in the light. That's something that a friend of mine wrote for me for this show. There is a video animation component which is playing downstairs, and then this brings into this protagonist this this slime creature that we'll say that takes this form of the woman, and I'm interested in this protagonist for various reasons. Again, sort of the poetic and philosophical underpinnings of the mythology of their existence, being these creatures that have no boundary. They multiply in this rhizomatic way. They do not eat, they just envelop. They just like absorb and envelop and grow out in all directions. And I did not invent the idea of them. This has been like an idea of them or that circulates on the internet. You can find it on like DeviantArt and stuff like that. So the idea of them is not my invention, but sort of I'm referencing them or like recontextualizing them in this different way. And for this series of work, which I've been working on here, I made a couple of these sculptures here as well. Some things that are very important to me about this work. So the word porcelain comes from the material's Italian name, porcellana, which translates as cowrie shell. So Marco Polo, when he was first exploring Africa and Asia, he brought back a sample of the cowrie shell, he brought back a sample of porcelain, and in Europe they called it porcelain. I'll talk a little bit more about the history of that. Porcelain was first used in China, and then it travels to Korea and Japan, and Europe there was this craze for porcelain. It was imported in high quantities from Asia. There was this really fetishization of the material for its purity, its whiteness, and its exotic beauty. Also, the word avatar is something that is important to me. It's originally a Sanskrit word meaning the manifestation of a deity or the release of the soul in a bodily form on earth, and it literally means descent or falling. Avatar is a figure in falling from the original, falling from the divine. And today we use this word to represent like a person in a video game or an avatar on your phone or even like these bitmoji kind of things that we use. So this idea of the avatar word itself has transformed over history. And I'm interested in both definitions of the word as well as porcelain. I'm interested in both definitions as well as fetish, which is another word that has changed a lot throughout history. So originally, fetish was a Portuguese word that was used to describe inanimate object worshipped for its supposed magical powers. And this word was used by the Portuguese to describe religious practices in Africa, again used to justify colonization, and was used in the creation of the other. So both this idea of porcelain, this idea of the fetish, this idea of avatar is very related to this concept of the other. And now fetish, of course, we know is like a form of sexual desire that's linked to like sort of abnormal like foot fetish or like leather fetish or these different things. So these like sort of anime-esque slime girls are also would fall in the realm of the fetish.
Or avatar.
Or avatar. Yeah, or avatar. And porcelain like is a very important material for me. I think that words are like veins and they carry like blood from the past into the present. And so again, I'm very interested in language. And so like I said, the English word of porcelain comes from the Italian porcellana, which was also given to the cowrie shell. And it is proposed that the early examples of porcelain resemble the cowrie shell in their finish. So yeah, along with porcelain and the cowrie shell, Marco Polo also brought back the first Western record of coal, gunpowder, paper money, and exotic plants of animals. And it was sort of his knack for describing the exotic and describing the other that was sort of inspired the colonial conquest of Europe and other places. And there's a Roman scholar who wrote that the Latin word porcus, meaning piglet, was commonly used in and around girls as slang, and this derivative porcellana was derived from that and applied to the cowrie shell because of the shape, the appearance of the porcus, meaning basically it's like slang as we would say in English, like pussy or something. So the alternative name for the shells, for the cowrie shells, was also Veneria, which refers to the goddess of Venus and other closely related associations. So the etymology of this material, like the definition of the word porcelain, even the word itself carries through from the female anatomy to the cowrie shell to an object to porcelain to clay, and it traverses culture and geographic location and physical material and aesthetic association, and but even traversing all those different uses and meanings, it still carries with it this origin of desire and diminishment and this sought after sort of pleasure technology of the other, the non-phallic, the non-European bodies, something to be conquered, distributed, stolen, recontextualized. So fetish being a word that means both the form of sexual desire and an object that carries supernatural powers. I'm interested in both of those. Like these objects, art objects, I believe do hold supernatural powers, and that is why we are obsessed with making them and want them around, you know.
I mean, you do that.
Yeah, but people, I think the world at large needs and wants art. I don't know, maybe I'm alone in that, but yeah, so I'm interested in these, like, you know, history is so chaotic, but there are these like network systems that can be traced through language and material, and we have the power to like reference them and use them and also build new worlds with them, and so that is.
It's very interesting thought. Let's see.
That is sort of where I'm at now, and then here, like I said, I've been making some paintings.
Show us.
So here are two pictures of some paintings that I've made, which are sort of based on these interior landscapes of the sculptures.
Oh, nice.
So what the sculpture would look like from the inside. And again, I was kind of talking about interior landscapes earlier on in the presentation. In my animation, a lot of times I use, let me share, sorry. I use the scans of my sculptures as landscapes within the animation. Here's some like little tests that I've done here at Schaumbad, just animation tests, crafting something in clay, scanning it, and then animating it.
You can scan it here.
Yeah, with your phone, your cell phone. It's not the strongest technology, but again, I like when technology is so these paintings are sort of based on these spaces.
Oh. You don't need that perfectionist. For you, it's, I think, more important to have that maybe also trashy pop effect of not completely precise or not realistic, but something between.
Yeah, exactly. Something between. Like I love when technology like fails at its job. So yeah, here's some. These are just sort of tests, or I call it like video sketchbook of tests that I've done while I'm here with different things that I've done. So.
Great.
And thank you. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you like Graz?
Graz is beautiful. It's been beautiful and lonely, but also like solitary. Like there's something really wonderful about the solitariness of this time. Just also with COVID in general, I've learned to like find a lot of solace in the solitary. But Graz is beautiful. I love the bike ride from where I'm staying to here. I love beginning and ending my day that way. And yeah, and the people I have met here have been wonderful.
Yes.
And yeah.
There's always a goodbye.
Yeah, I know. There's always a goodbye.
Yeah, but it was very nice for us to have you here. I think now I will open the discussion for a short feedback, and then we will have maybe. Yeah, this is the microphone you can have.
Do I need a microphone? Thank you, Amia. I really enjoyed your presentation. And actually what struck me is this, in the first clips that you showed, especially the initial condition, I think, right? That actually these objects, they look so displaced and taken out from any context. And by this you enabled everyone who, like the spectators, actually to make own relations to them. And constantly I had the feeling we need to define the relations at every point or step of moving. And it's always like, I don't know, I found it really fascinating. And now also when you showed the inner landscapes actually, and you place these objects in their inner landscapes, it actually changes, or I saw this change from dislocated objects to located objects in their own landscape, kind of. So this, I really like this. And actually also the objects that are kind of, I mean, almost disgusting, no? I was like, ooh, okay, it's like, ooh, this organics moving around and stuff, but at the same time still being kind of, I don't know, still attractive or affecting, kind of, and I don't know, I felt kind of, yeah, interesting to experience that. Thank you.
Yeah, the abject, the grotesque, and everything that I definitely think about.
Any other question?
Yeah, I heard you mention the word multiplicities a couple of times. Do you have like some theoretical references that you work with also, like textbooks,
Yes.
people?
I mean, I love reading, and I love reading other people's ideas. I'm a terrible academic, though, and I will read something, take a clip from it, put it in a Google Doc, and I'm very disorganized with where things come from. But I can email you things that have inspired me of different theoretical texts or philosophical texts. I shouldn't say a lot. Occasionally I do. Philosophical texts, or even like I said, like user-made entry in an internet forum. Like, I'm reading all of these things, but I like to give them all the same hierarchy. Like, there's not one that's more important because of its academic validity than the other. So I'm even like screenshotting films or watching anime and screenshotting like a subtitle. Sometimes a subtitle taken out of context is like the most beautiful moment too.
Is there also on the body?
Yes.
Sometimes the text.
Yes, exactly. Which I didn't show a clip of here, but yeah, there's downstairs. There's downstairs.
Let's watch it then later.
Yeah, but in this piece, the body is sort of wallpapered almost with screenshots of films or images of swarms of bees or smoke or something where particles or objects become a multiplicity, and in their multiplicity sort of become abstract.
You don't know if it's a shadow or if it's a ghost or if it's an inner life.
All of the above.
Old Japanese creatures.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one I didn't really get to show that much. But yeah, I love reading, and I feel like I don't know, I do this thing where I'm constantly searching for like an idea that resonates, right? So I'm always searching for an idea that resonates, no matter where it comes from. And if it has a resonance inside of me, then I put that in the Google Doc of things to remember.
I think really we could talk for hours, and it's a pity that we don't have so much time, but I think I will say thank you if there is not really another question here or in the chat. Martin, are there any visitors writing us? Okay, then once again, thank you very much.
Realized today between me and Anya is these landscapes I'm working with in my animations are very cave-like. They are literal caves that I'm making. So
the inner cave.
Yeah, the inner cave landscape. So with that, I'll pass it to you.
You can say that because I had the same impression, obviously. I was like, yes, let's do something together.
Yes, I think the microphone, yours is also on.
Should I unplug?
Yes.
It wasn't on, sorry.
Yeah.
It was off.
Thank you, Amma. Yeah, this was also the question, what is really connecting you two artists? Maybe at the first that you was here in Graz and you get friends, and it was very nice to see that too. You're not alone here, Amia. Yeah, but I think also it's sometimes good to leave the area where you're confronted with it and just make a distance, to find new stuff. So now we are at the part. Do we need a break? Yeah, maybe just. Let's make 5 minutes break so people could maybe.
Okay.
But really not long.
Of course.
Let's do this just 5 minutes break.
Yes, no problem.
Jawohl, Damen und Herren, Freunde und Freundinnen des Art Brunch, nun ist es wieder soweit. Wir beginnen in wenige Sekunden. Der Flug, wie heißt das? Wir fliegen in wenige Sekunden. We need to take off very soon. Please fasten your seat, Blake. Ready for Reza? Everything all right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Dear Jana, if you can hear me now, the cooking water should be If I could ask you to sit down, because we need a little more silent, or you can. David, if you can hear me, come now. Okay, we are online still. Welcome back to the Art Brunch number 67. And this artist talk we had with Amia Yokoyama before, and now with Anna Jurkiewicz, a grandiose sound artist, singer, researcher, friend of nature. And we was also glad to have her the last 2 months, around 3 months, in this program of our Styria-Artists-in-Residence. And yeah, I will give the microphone to you, and we have now this presentation of some of your works, and we have also video, and later we have this performance with Vera Hagemann and Reza Kellner together with Anna Jurkiewicz.
Thank you, Keyvan. I want to say for the start that how much I appreciate the luxury that we can be in an event today together on the last day, and to thank all of you who came here today, choosing that this is how you want to spend the last Sunday before lockdown in Austria. It's really, really, really an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
And I will talk about my time here, those 3 months. Sorry, I have to make it full screen. So just the. Go back to view. Yeah. Oh, it's there. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So for. Why is there? Okay. I chose to speak of my experience here in the manner of rather focusing on my experience here more than presenting other things that I have done before. And sorry, no. So this is what you'll see is just an overview of work in progress, and I want to share what I find most interesting and what draws me to a particular kind of environment that I work in. For the past 2 years, which is the environment of the natural underground, cave systems, and underground water flows, rivers, and those dark places where creatures also hide, and also we humans, we might go there to search for the perfect silence, which is quite hard to find anywhere. So my time in as a Styria-Artists-in-Residence was largely devoted to going and being in the landscape in this way, listening to it, maybe by a manner of a bit of a background, how I came to this point. I'm a person who first got into sound art or sound creative business through singing, and to singing I began singing through traditional songs. So this is how I started in the first place to activate my vocal apparatus, let's say, other than speaking. And
what do you mean by traditional? Do you talking about Polish traditional
yes,
singing or classical singing?
No, traditional. I mean, I use this word instead of folk because folk has some connotations of already like reconstructed music or music in a different context. But I really mean traditional in the way of really going to the origin. In Poland, there is this movement called Inkrudo musicians. So these are either people who continue rural traditions of music on site, or also sometimes in recent years, people from cities who got very interested in this music, not to preserve it in a museum way of thinking, but to revive it, to use its social function, which was to build communities and simply experience things in communities. So I mean, when I say traditional songs and traditional singing, I mean this basic human activity which was involved before in many aspects of life. Actually, all the important moments, such as all the rites of passage, all the ceremonies and rituals, and also every day, like also in work and just social life. So I'm interested in all kinds of roots, repertoire, from lullabies to funeral songs. And I've been researching, I mean, I would say I'm a researcher, practitioner of this kind of singing. So I did some ethnomusicological research in Poland, mostly focused on funeral songs and traditions. But I'm also, from the very beginning, we document the singing also to learn it and to practice it, and also we, I mean, me and some groups with whom I sing, we also try to stay in close touch to the singers from whom we can get to know those songs. So it's some kind of a master-disciple relationship also in it.
Generations.
Yes, it's an intergenerational transmission, which is of course now very distant from what it used to look like. But in the past it was really an oral transmission, intergenerational, and also within a community. What we do now is not within a community because we don't come from the same community, but on the other hand, we are trying to also build a community of, like, in singing, through singing also. So I'm also very interested not only in the origin of this music and its form, but also in its social function and its ritual function, and also in how we could adapt that today, because there is still a strong need for moments of building a community in an important moment, in a moment of transformation, both in life cycle and in social life as well. There are many moments. So 2 examples of directions that I go with this topic is first, I also sing at funerals, and also this summer I finished a course of individual ceremonies of farewell. So it's about thinking how to maybe be inspired by conventional, traditional forms of funerals, but adapt them very consciously to the needs of people today and to the needs of the actual people who are saying goodbye to someone.
And also
this is one
in the religious, not exactly
yes,
in the religious.
Yes, which is in Poland not easy, not an easy. I come from Poland. In Poland, this is not an easy thing to do. Funerals are largely monopolized by church, and it's the case. So it is so even very often when the family is actually maybe not strong, maybe doesn't have a strong connection to Catholicism, but this is still the easiest way to go when there is a need for a funeral. So this is one direction, to also modify songs, adapt them to our sensitivity also and our needs. And another example, which is already taking the songs further away from the origin, is to use them in artivism initiatives. In Warsaw, we started an initiative called the Earthly Lament, and this is not an informal group of people who is also open, like it is a participatory experience for everyone, open for everyone to join. Everyone who shows up can join. So this is using the traditional songs of lament to lament and find a channel also to deal with, to process emotions related to climate crisis and this moment in time that we find ourselves in. So of course it's also a change, and the intention of the singing is different than the original one, because it's not about mourning a person, it's about processing the death of ecosystems, and but somehow the purpose is the same, that through singing we can just have an embodied experience of having time to process this, also with the sound itself, because the last thing about this kind of singing is that it's using open voice in a very natural manner. So it's more similar to speaking or calling than to singing in a classical manner. So this also gives, when there is a group of people singing with this voice together, the sound gets very strong, and it permeates the bodies of everyone who is in the room, and it really fills the room, and everyone can feel it in their bodies, especially when they're emitting sound also. You can feel the interaction between your own voice and your own bone resonance from your voice with the vibration, the resonance that you also get from other people. And this is, I think, one of the, at least that I know of, one of the best ways to be introduced in the state of transition of some kind. For example, so it used to accompany birth, wedding, forming a family, and also farewell, death. So I think it's still a usable tool nowadays. So this long introduction leads me already to the topic of my stay in Graz. So I am a vocalist, as I said, and I'm also involved in experimenting with voice in contemporary music. I've had some interesting collaborations in that field that I will not go into now. And later on, that led me to also experiment with field recording and recordings in general, and yes, towards sound art. So my time in Graz, actually, why I decided to come to Graz was because someone shared with me the information that there is an open call for an artist for artist residency in Graz. And I didn't know anything about Graz, but when I Googled it, I found out very quickly that it's located within karst landscape. So it's immediately got me interested, and I thought, it seems that there are many caves around Graz, so this is a perfect place to go for 3 months to just explore the landscape and soundscape, which is what I've been doing mostly. So I've mostly been outside of Graz, I would say.
Maybe I just want to mention, when you came here at the first, I think it was on the day before the opening of that exhibition, about the numbers 13, and it was interesting to have you also in that opening performance. Also was created by Vera Hagemann, in the very nice collaboration from the beginning. So you was part of the Schaumbad at the moment when you came, and it was really interesting, and yeah, a pleasure.
Yes, I will get back to this later, because this was the start of a process that took place over those 3 months also, which evolved into a collaboration. Sorry, I'm hearing some buzzes. I don't know if I'm supposed to do something about it or not. Okay, so my time here was from September to November, and some locations that were important for me in my exploration of the surroundings of Graz. My first point of reference, the first place that I went to on my first day was the River Mur, and I was coming back to it very often, also making recordings. And Lurgrotte, which was my point of reference before I came here, because this is a very large cave system with an underground river. And this year I was very into underground rivers. I did some sounds, it's called an audio paper earlier this year about underground rivers. So I wanted to continue that in Lurgrotte, and I did. And then there were other places like Badl and a little cave there, Badlhülle, then Drachenhülle and Frauenmauerhülle, and in general the area around Eisenerz, the mountainous area with Hochschwab, etc. So I enjoyed a lot exploring the surroundings of Graz. I also used my bike a lot, and by the way, one of the things that I most enjoyed in this particular residency was that we have a bike, each of us, and we can use it for 3 months or however long we're here. So I used it a lot to go to Pegau. And yes, it was my long time partner in exploring the landscape here, and still is. So the bike was my companion, and I also had some animal companions that I encountered in wandering throughout the landscape and the soundscape. Some of them are personalities that I haven't been meeting so often, like the salamander. it's an honor to meet them.
How big it was?
It's this big, I think. And yes, and some other as well. And then, as Keyvan also already mentioned, I was sucked into the life, the artistic life of Graz at the very moment I arrived. When I came to Schaumbad for the first time, I was invited to take part in a performance that was taking place the next day, and I said, yes, of course, why not? So this was the day that I met two people who are very important and with whom we together developed a collaboration that I've been enjoying a lot. So it's Reza Kellner, this sound artist, and Vera Hagemann, a performer. So I've enjoyed really working with both of them. And the second thing we did before actually working in the cave project together, we also did a performance in Schaumbad for the closing. For the closing of an exhibition that was started by the 13 performance, and the three of us we made a performance of which the main motive was digestion and digesting some beliefs that are not easy to digest also. So this is also a recurring motive that you will see later on as I speak about caves as well.
We have a documentation of that opening, I know, but also from the ending, because you did a
We
movie.
made some documentation, but it's not published for now.
Do you want to say where it will be probably foundable in the future? Or you want to put it?
Vimeo, I think, yeah. Schaumbad Facebook, yes. Okay, so let's go to the cave now, and to caves, multiple caves. And I will be using photographs that we took together with Reza also in caves. I don't even know where to. I never know where to start with, because this is just a very specific kind of environment that has so many processes going on and aspects and perspectives possible to look at it.
Excuse me, is this now Amia or?
Yes, I was actually enjoying very much also seeing in Amia's work a lot of similarities to environments. And this is a very enjoyable parallel as well, that that Amia's work consists in building those worlds from the scratch, and they end up being worlds that I really can relate to as worlds that I just find when I go underground. They are as otherworldly as what you build, and also they are non-human made worlds, of course, but they are also human altered very strongly, and this is something that I want to stress now, because in my presentation maybe it will not be visible so much. I didn't choose to include the sound material also that shows that, but even though the cave is the perfect place to to go off the radar from all the stimuli that we have around us in the landscape on the surface of the ground, such as all the traffic noise, that even if we find ourselves in a forest, relatively wild forest somewhere far away from any village or city, you will still get an airplane noise from time to time, and there is no way of escaping that, really, other than immersing ourselves in other kinds of noise. So the cave is a place I recommend for anyone who is looking for perfect silence. If it's a dry cave, because otherwise it's usually quite busy in caves with all the water movement. So this is something also about the origin of caves, that they are formed, of course, the karst caves, because not all caves are karst caves, but the ones around Graz, for sure, most of them were formed by water flow. First sinking through very small cracks, then the cracks widen and widen and widen for over very long periods of time that are not even graspable to us as humans. They are beyond our perspective completely. And this matter is constantly moving there. So this is a never-ending process. All caves are still, when you're in a cave, in this environment, you can still experience the same movement of the matter, which lies in the water dissolving the rock, and then the particles travel with water, and they also sediment. So this is how, over time, the shape of every space, basically, in a cave is transformed. So what we see now, if we go there, might seem like a timeless space that seems to have been there forever, and it has, but on the other hand is ever changing. It's also just a point in time. In geological, in deep time perspective, is also just a point at this time. So it's in the process. So these are things that I often think about when I'm engaged in listening sessions in caves, and also I just stare at them, and I stare at very closely also at smell
and touch them.
Of course, yes, with all my senses, of course. Yes, this is a very sensory, rich sensory experience. And thank you for bringing up the smell, because it's really also, it's the first thing maybe that you notice besides the darkness. And the eyesight is actually the most deprived sense in a cave, because you only use the light that you bring inside. So it's narrow, it's just a scope within which not much can really fit. So the best way of embracing the vastness of the space is, for example, to use a voice. So this is within this architecture. It has very unique acoustic properties, because usually in terms of acoustic effects, there is a lot of reverb in large rooms and large domes and spaces, but it's quite different to human-made architecture, because the shape is never regular as in human-made architecture. So there are all those nuances that you can discover using the voice, for example. Yes, and there is often room for resonance, and it's. I'm talking here now. I've been talking a lot about using the voice, but human sound interventions aside, there is also very often resonance with just cave sounds. I mean, there are spaces where the architecture is so rich and circular shaped, spherical. For example, I found one. It wasn't in Austria, It was in Czech Republic. I found a cave there with a room which is almost spherically shaped, and it has so much resonance that it's formed in such a way because it's almost closed, but then again at the bottom it's opened to the riverbed of the river that flows next to it, and there is heavy water flow there usually because that one is a water cave, and just the droplets dripping in there create so much reverb that it's not something I think that anyone would expect before actually finding themselves in that atmosphere. So for me, this experience also in Styria is mostly about absorbing atmospheres that so this requires a lot of silence. So this also means that I usually go to caves on my own, because whenever I'm with someone, we talk, and then at the very beginning, the focus and the level of perception is very different already.
But is it dangerous when there's nobody there and then you crawl on that?
I mean, I wouldn't go to any cave on my own, of course not. In Poland, I also go to vertical caves, but it's a team thing. It's a team effort, teamwork. But so when I want to do deep listening, I just choose caves that are relatively safe, and there is no way to really, I don't know, be in danger.
The smartphones probably does not work in this.
No, there is no reception. So, but of course, the good practice is to tell someone, at least one person, that today I'm going to Fallen-Mauer-Hülle, for example, and I will be back in the evening. So let's check in to see if I'm back or not, in case anything should change. Yes, there are karst caves in Poland. There is a couple of regions where you can find them. Yes. Yes, in Poland there is no. I mean, there are some caves and also other kind of rock formations, but they are not karst caves, of course, and karst could happen in gypsum, but not in Poland. It's not there. So karst caves in Poland are mostly located in Wyżyna Jura Krakowsko-Częstochowska region. I can tell you later. And Tatra mountains is the region that the. Yes, in High Tatra. Yes. There are caves, most vertical caves, and the largest caves I've been to in Poland, they are located in High Tatra. I mean, the entrance usually is about at the level of around 1,500 meters above sea level. This is the entrance point to a lot of caves in Tatra mountains. And there are vertical caves, and they have very long shafts, just vertical chimneys and vertical spaces. So they are also very interesting in terms of acoustics. But then, of course, you have to be careful to choose a cave where bats are not present. Yes, because, and also the time of the year, because especially from autumn to spring, it should be a silent time. Okay, so I came to the topic of performance, and I already talked about using the voice to get to know the space. But the proposal that I made for Schaumbad when I was coming for Schaumbad for my residency in Styria was had the working title of Womb Tomb, and I wanted to work on an underground performance vocal mostly, and sound, also using field recordings and atmospheres that are found underground. And I didn't do it with a whole group of people as I intended, also because of COVID. But thanks to the fact that I met Vera Hagemann and Reza Kellner, we could start together to explore also a little bit this area that I was thinking about. So why this topic in caves? Of course, I will try not to get into detail right now because I feel that maybe it's time to perform and not talk. But caves are a shelter both to non-human and humans also. I mean, they used to be very important locations for shelter, for early people, and also for ritual purposes, burials, ceremonies. And there is interesting research also on how Paleolithic art was created. Yegor Reznikov is a researcher who found that there is correlation between where exactly in caves in France and Spain the most cave art was located, that those are the same spots which have the most resonance in those caves. So probably the ritual activity in those caves was not limited to cave art, to making the images on the walls. It was also, it involved sounds and yes, making the space also resonate with voices and maybe other sounds. So in terms of burials, it's also this kind of a hiding place as a tomb, and also the general meaning of underground for us is also related very strongly to the grave, tomb, end of life. And this is also, I mean, I really love doing interviews with people about caves, and also exploring the sensations that we can get talking about it. Because, for example, I find that when I narrate some of my experiences of, for example, getting through narrow passages in caves, I find that many people feel very uncomfortable, and they start feeling the sensation of getting through a narrow passage, like at birth, but also this involves this fear of getting stuck, fear of being stuck, and or simply some claustrophobic sensations. And this is also an interesting aspect of what the underground means to us in general. And shelter also, yes, here I want to always look at the two sides, the human perspective and the non-human presence in caves, which is the main presence there. So we are exploring performatively the communication and the sound experience also of this environment, but always in relation to the primary inhabitants of caves, and they are many. So there are the sleepers, so mostly that's bats. For several months, caves become, not all caves, but the ones that have beneficial conditions for the bats, they become their shelter. And the bats hibernate in them, so then they shouldn't be disturbed. And they go into hibernation, so they slow down their living functions. And it's also a point of crossing between also the perspective of human shelter found in caves that they used to be inhabited, and also in terms of sensory deprivation, that in the dark and in the quiet we can also find rest for our overstimulated selves. So I'm also in general very interested in lullabies, as also as a tool for self-regulation simply, and for also meaningful and high quality exchange between people. So there is this, and about, yes, shelter, cave as a shelter also means that there are a lot of leftovers of life, all forms of life that is there and that was there. So there is also a very specific ecosystem involved always, and whenever there are bats, there are also many insects feeding on bat species, etc. And of course, the caves are tombs, also not only to humans. There are many animal bones found there. And this sometimes also means destroying the cave, partially because whenever there are excavations, the interference with the ecosystem is very significant.
Yeah, there is always a critical point of finding new caves, because there was hiding for many years. And for example, I remember this movie, Cave of Forgotten Dreams, from Werner Herzog, when it was one of the ancient caves that he found, but lots of critics said, why did you open it? It's better to leave it.
Yes, yes, it's about finding the balance between wanting to be there and limiting my presence there. Yes, because it's not my habitat. And the decay and the nourishing kind of decay is present both in the biological sphere in the cave itself, but it's also present in the symbolic around it. For example, here I put a quote from one of the funeral songs from Poland. Yes. Powracasz w ziemię, co matką twą była. Teraz cię strawi, niedawno żywiła. So this was a fragment of a funeral song from Poland. And the translation is, you return to the ground, your mother that bore you. Once she fed you, and now she will digest you. So this is the cycle of life and ever-changing forms of it. And also, still again, the underground as the place, the space of transformation somehow, to like everything that decays goes into the ground, and then also from the ground things grow and emerge. So there are some, yes, clay creatures and bat feces. And sometimes also things appear, elements appear in cave that don't belong there, like some seeds, and they can even sometimes still sprout and start growing. I've also seen fungi that belong to the surface in the cave, that were brought into a cave by water flow, and they managed to thrive there, even though there is it's a different environment. But there are also forms of beings that belong to the cave, and there are lots of forms of mold. Also, they flourish on decay. And there are even cave fungi. And these ones grow on wood. The wood itself was brought there by humans, but the fungi thrive without any light. Yes, so that luckily brings me to playing a short video first, and then we will invite you to participate in a short performance with Vera Hagemann and Reza Kellner. Okay, I have to find the...
Maybe if there are some questions
yes,
from the audience, now it's a good moment, I guess.
Maybe I just open it again. Ah, yeah.
And then you can go to full screen.
Thank you.
Wait, no. Window. No. Or here's full screen.
I was interested, Anna, if there's for the government some, for example, is this forbidden to go to some caves? And
yes, of course. Access to caves is often limited for protection reasons, as it should be, I think. Okay, there is no sound.
you have to play, I guess.
Okay, good. Good then. Yes. Okay. I will tune out now, and so that's a couple of minutes of movement, relentless dance of life within a cave, and there is also sound from field recordings from caves, and you will hear more sounds in the performance part. So after we play this video, we will invite you to move around with us.
Yeah, we just could leave this and it will be in the hall. So if somebody have the smartphone and is connected with the Zoom and wants to film it, it will be also in the screening from different kind of views. So I think we could manage it after the video. then let's.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Just to say that the sound was not the sound. Something happened there. Yes, so this was not the sound that we made. That was some, I guess, artificial intelligence intervention into the video. And now we invite you to join us in a very short performance in which you can see a sample of this work in progress that I was talking about. So we invite you to join us downstairs, and the performance will take place in the exhibition room, which is now home to an exhibition by Nelly Stein. And so what we are doing there is also in dialogue with her work. With me exploring this space in an auditory manner will be Vera Hagemann and also Reza Kellner. And Reza Kellner will be the figure just doing the listening and also using the binaural microphones for also trying to bring this experience closer to for later. And Vera Hagemann and I will make sound interventions in the space created by the field recording from a cave. So without further ado, I invite you to join us there, and Vera will also shortly be there, but first I have to call her. So we have to find each other first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. One more. And one more thing we forgot, the room for these animations, the movies from Amia is exactly in this. And we will turn the music aloud now because we lost. And the exhibition from Nelly Stein is also for those people who didn't saw. And I think we will just leave the room open for another 10 minutes or something to show this some videos. But the artists are present. Please enjoy